Progesterone is an appetite driving hormone, where estradiol is an appetite suppressing hormone. So by day 3, our progesterone's down, our estradiol is up. We are hormonally programmed to be very effective at doing fasting. We also emotionally feel better at this particular time, so there's less sort of emotional eating drivers. And at this particular time, we're also the most insulin sensitive in our cycle as well. So this is a great time to further enhance that or support that, especially if there are some insulin resistant issues going on. Hi everyone, it's Megan Ramos here with another episode of the Fasting Method podcast. Today, I'm going to answer your questions. We're going to tackle topics such as why it's best to do extended fasting during the first week of your cycle. Is it safe to fast when you have hypothyroidism? And what about BMI? How much does that factor into whether or not you should be fasting? All right, so we're going to kick it off with that last one. Beth from North Carolina says, I've heard Dr. Fung mention that he does not recommend fasting for people with a body mass index or BMI under 20. My BMI is under 20. I've recently lowered my hemoglobin A1C from 6.2 to 5.5%, but I would like to lower it further or at least maintain it. Would IF or OMAD, which is 1 meal a day, be okay to do? This is a really great question. It's really important that individuals are not malnourished when they are fasting. So someone who generally has a lower BMI, we assume they don't have a ton of body fat, not a lot that's going to sustain them when they're fasting. But what we do know is that body mass index or BMI is not a really good measurement of anything. So if you are on the lower side of your total weight, there's a few things that I would recommend doing before you decide whether or not you're going to start fasting. The first one is have a DEXA body composition scan. Do you hold excess body fat, visceral fat, that unhealthy fat in and around your organs, subcutaneous fat? Are you what we call a TOFI, someone who's thin on the outside and fat on the inside? If your DEXA body composition does show that you have an unhealthy amount of body fat and you have a subpar amount of lean mass in your body, meaning that you might have weaker brittle bones or that you might not have very much muscle mass or deteriorating muscle mass, something called sarcopenia, then this is where I would move on to step 2. So if you do your DEXA body composition scan and it shows that you do have a higher level of body fat than lean mass, go on to level 2 here and get some blood work done. Make sure all your nutrient stores are good. And if you have any nutrient deficiencies, then take care of them. Recheck in a few months and then begin your fasting journey. But sometimes when we have a little bit too much body fat and we don't have enough lean mass, the answer isn't always necessarily losing more body fat. Sometimes the answer is putting on good lean mass, fixing those brittle bones if your bone mass density is low, getting on some good muscle mass. So putting on a little bit of weight, but healthy weight. So not all weight is unhealthy. I often share that throughout my journey, I hit a low of 97 pounds, but I had more body fat at 97 pounds than I did at 120 pounds. How can that be? Well, I did have to lose a little bit of body fat, but I mostly gained good weight. And gaining the good weight, increasing the ratio of good weight, muscle mass, and bone mass, which I didn't have very much of at 97 pounds, that's what brought my weight up. And bringing my weight up in a healthy way lowered my body fat percentage down significantly. So when I weighed 97 pounds and my body fat percentage was around 37%, the goal wasn't to get to 60 pounds. That was not the goal. That, of course, would have been unhealthy. The goal was to put on healthy weight. And I did have a little bit too much visceral fat, according to my DEXA body composition scan. So I did have to lose a couple of pounds. So when someone comes to me who is very slender, we look at these things. Are you a TOFI? Are you someone who's thin on the outside, fat on the inside? How much visceral fat is that DEXA scan saying that you have? If it's under 2 pounds, then I'd say, you know what, therapeutic fasting really isn't for you. You can do 12 or 14 hours regularly. You can do 16, 18 hours. You can focus on really good time-restricted eating protocols, but really try to get in some good protein and just focus on building some lean mass. Now, when someone has a little bit too much visceral fat, okay, let's do some intermittent fasting. We would be very gentle, just doing 24 hours of fasting, not every day, 2 or 3 times a week to target that visceral fat. 24 hours of fasting is actually very effective at targeting that visceral fat. You don't need to do 36, 42, 48. You don't need to do 3 days or 5 days to target that visceral fat. Subcutaneous fat can be a little bit more stubborn, and sometimes we benefit from doing longer fasts for that. But visceral fat, we can pretty much obliterate in a good 24-hour consistent fasting pattern. With this individual, again, if we did have that higher visceral fat, we would do those 24s 2 to 3 times a week. We would do anywhere from 14 to 18 hours of fasting on the other days, really prioritizing protein and a nutrient-dense diet just to help aid in the development of some healthy weight. Good bone mass density, good muscle mass, and the goal would to actually be to increase lean mass, so increase your total weight while losing a little bit of fat mass. So we would want the scale to actually go up kind of in the end, but being reflective of healthy weight. It's important to remember that the scale only tells you your total weight, but it doesn't tell you what that total weight is. Is it mostly fat or is it mostly muscle? Now I'm 5'3" and around 120 pounds. When I have little fat and more muscle and more strong bones is a really good spot for me. But if I weighed 120 pounds and I had a lot of fat and I had osteopenia or osteoporosis and sarcopenia, so my lean mass is really low, then I'd be unhealthy and I'd be at risk of all kinds of metabolic concerns. So this is where the total number on the scale can be really misleading, and it's important to know your body composition, and a DEXA body composition scan can tell you all of these departments so you know what to do. And then going for micronutrient testing. You can do standard micronutrient testing in almost any lab. If you're in the United States, Genova and SpectraCell do some more in-depth, detailed micronutrient testing. I personally have alternated between using both, depending on just sort of what's going on at each company, when I could get faster results, what my doctor's preference was, because I'm in California and do require a doctor to order it for me. They're both really great tests. They're ones that I also recommend to people that I work with. And then we want to make sure that we've tackled any of those nutrient deficiencies. Most importantly, you need to get your healthcare provider on board. You should never fast without having a cooperative and supportive physician or healthcare practitioner giving you the thumbs up. Now, again, we would sort of cap it at 24 hours. We would add in some strength and resistance training. We would really try to focus on optimizing the nutrients and the protein in the diet to help gain some good weight. So we can't always necessarily go by BMI, but BMI does pop up a little bit of a flag where we need to assess these things before we can determine whether or not it's safe. When someone has an A1C of 6.2 and they're on the lower side of things, chances are they are a bit of a TOFI. We know that we want to optimize our A1C, and an optimized A1C is 5.2 or below. So at 5.5, there could still be a further bit of optimization. I wouldn't be surprised if this individual does have a little bit of visceral fat, but they probably don't need to lose body fat, maybe half a pound, if that, and it's about putting on some healthy weight. So as long as we follow all the proper protocols, we have that healthcare provider on board, then we would transition into some strategic fasting strategies. With that being said, in this particular set of circumstances, it would be most advisable to work with a coach who can navigate this with you safely. So this is one of those instances where I would really recommend connecting with a fasting coach. You can learn more about coaching over on thefastingmethod.com.
Have you ever thought, I am my worst enemy when it comes to weight loss or health goals? If so, you are not alone. But this barrier does not need to keep holding you back. I'm offering a self-sabotage workshop that can end this pattern of defeat. Together, we will explore the root causes of your self-sabotage and create strategies to overcome the thoughts and behaviors that have been preventing you from feeling the success that you are seeking. You will learn to proactively avoid the pitfalls that have kept you feeling stuck and develop new responses to triggers that have served as roadblocks for years. Join me at TFM for my self-sabotage workshop that begins in May. The links are in the show notes. You can also enjoy 10% off any of the workshops and masterclasses we are offering from now until November on the TFM website. This includes the 3-pack and 6-pack bundles, as well as the All Access Pass, using the coupon code PODCAST10, capital PODCAST 10.
The next question says, I have been doing therapeutic fasting to address my polycystic ovary syndrome, or PCOS, and hopefully get my period back. Do you have any recommendations for a preconception plan for fasting and nutrition? Is there anything I should be doing before trying to conceive? How will I know my body is healthy enough? Oh, my friend, I could probably do a whole podcast series just on this alone. If you've been following my journey, when I was young, I had PCOS. I was able to correct it in my 20s by targeting and treating the insulin resistance first and then optimizing my sex hormones later. But because I developed PCOS so young and had it for about 15 years before I was able to treat it, before I knew what to do, before I even knew that I could treat it, I had burned through a lot of my ovarian reserves. So I was 38. Trying to get pregnant, and I didn't have much in terms of ovarian reserves. Knowing that I wanted to have a couple of kids, and my second kid would probably be born in my 40s if I was lucky, I ended up doing 3 rounds of IVF to bank embryos just to guarantee that I could likely, hopefully, have a second baby as I got older, because in my early 40s, I wouldn't have these ovarian reserves. So I feel like since I was 14 years old and I'm going to be 41 soon, I've spent a lot of my personal health focus has been on treating these things. Now, I never lost my period with PCOS. I always did have a regular period with PCOS, but so many women that we work with don't. So one of the best things you can do is if you're looking to try to conceive, regardless of whether you have PCOS or not, is get that micronutrient testing. Build your nutrient stores back up. Take a pre-methylated folate. The brand of prenatals that I use is WeNatal. I have no affiliation with the brand. I have talked to the founders of the brand. They have occasionally sent me some samples, but I do pay out of pocket every single month. They also have an egg optimization supplement that recently came out. They have a DHA supplement. Now I have all my embryos on ice, so I still take their prenatal because it's got that pre-methylated folate in it. It's got choline in it. But the most important thing you can do as soon as possible in your preconception journey is to test your micronutrients and bring them up to where they need to be, to those optimal levels. And once they're there, then that's when I would begin trying to conceive. In my own journey ahead of doing IVF, I knew that it was coming up. And I spent a solid 3 months, because the egg lifespan is 3 months. I spent 3 months making sure that I was optimizing every single one of these every day, either through nutrition, first and foremost, always through nutrition, or if there were some obvious deficiencies in your nutrition through supplementation, and monitoring this very, very closely. It's the most important thing that you can do. Again, PCOS or not, whether you're 22 years old or 42 years old or anywhere in between trying to conceive. you want to get a head start on this. And if you can give yourself 6 months to do it, even better. Now, I was in a unique position because when I did my initial baseline micronutrient testing, I was almost optimal across the board. Obviously, I know a little bit about nutrition and for many years had been working on optimizing things. But if you're just starting, you want to give yourself 6 months. It will make a world of difference. And ladies out there, I know how eager it can be to want to be a mama. But this 6 month just totally radically sets a foundation for your kid's future. It's the most important thing that you'll do. All right. Now back to the whole fasting topic, which most of you are here for. PCOS is a form of diabetes of the ovaries. It's essentially diabetes of the ovaries. The advice that Jason and I have always given has been quite different from those of other functional female hormone specialists. Our peers who we respect so much, they often really try to optimize the sex hormones as much as possible through nutritional strategies, and over time see the insulin resistance improve. And these strategies are a little bit different than what we would do with insulin resistance. So a little bit less fasting during the second half of the cycle, a little bit more carbs during the second half of the cycle. But when someone has insulin resistance and that's causing PCOS, Jason and I have just always found it being so much more successful is treating the insulin resistance first, obliterating the insulin resistance, and then optimizing those sex hormones secondary. So what I'm talking about is we would treat you just like a diabetic. We would focus on doing a very low carb or ketogenic diet, depending on sort of your adrenal needs. Someone who has some adrenal issues going on, if it's on the lower end of the side of things, more sort of adrenal fatigue or insufficiency, HPA-axis dysfunction, we would be sort of more of a moderate to liberal low carb diet. If someone's got more cortisol issues in sort of the opposite direction, or is cortisol healthy, then we focus as a low carb or a ketogenic diet to help. And then we would do therapeutic fasting. The first week of your cycle is actually the best week to do extended fasting. Extended fasting for you at the start of your journey might look like something from 24 to 48 hours. As your journey progresses, it might look like something 48 hours, 3 days, or 5 days. But usually around day 3 of your cycle is when you plan an extended fast. Even for myself, today's day and age, I always pencil in any extended fast I do to be starting on day 3 of my cycle. Why is that? It's the most hormonally easy time to do an extended fast. As day 1 of our cycle happens, our progesterone levels are coming down quickly and our estrogen levels are shooting up very quickly. Now, by day 1 of your cycle, your progesterone levels have kind of dipped already. Progesterone is an appetite driving hormone, where estradiol is an appetite suppressing hormone. So by day 3, our progesterone's down, our estradiol is up. We are hormonally programmed to be very effective at doing fasting. We also emotionally feel better at this particular time, so there's less sort of emotional eating drivers. And at this particular time, we're also the most insulin sensitive in our cycle as well. So this is a great time to further enhance that or support that, especially if there are some insulin resistant issues going on. Once ovulation happens, we do notice that the appetite starts to bump up a little bit. And that particular time, we start to see estradiol come down over the next 7 days and progesterone go up over the next 7 days. And then that week before our cycle is when we struggle the most with fasting. So during week 1 of a woman's cycle, we tend to do extended fasts, or whatever that might mean for you. As we approach ovulation, we still try to stay in that therapeutic range of 24 to 48 hours. As we go just post-ovulation, 24 hours. And then that week before the period, we focus on just good time-restricted eating. And if we're trying to conceive, we do add more carbs, root vegetables. I'll be specific, not just all carbs, root vegetables, we start adding in after ovulation to support progesterone. But when you are first starting out with this, you don't have a period, you don't have a cycle to even know because the insulin resistance is so bad, then we just fast as much as we can, tolerate as much as fits into our schedule, and we keep the carbs down. Once you start getting a regular period and a regular cycle, then that means, we've done a good job tackling a lot of the PCOS issues. And then we move into supporting those sex hormones by breaking down the cycle week by week and talking about targeted fasting and nutritional strategies per week. So I hope that helps. I'll say most women takes about 4 to 6 months to get their period back on a regular cadence. And then after that, we see a lot of people get pregnant in the 6 months following that. So I would be very optimistic. We have an amazing person on our team. She's actually just taking some time off for personal reasons, Dr. Nadia Pataguana. We called her a baby whisperer. In about a year, a lot of women got pregnant working with her. She'll be back doing some coaching in the fall, a unique program that we're going to be launching in the fall. But we have an incredible team that's fully able to support you if you're in this journey. You're not alone. You'll find a lot of community members that are trying to conceive and tackle PCOS and get regular cycles as well. So the fasting method, we're a great tool for you, my friend. And I want to give you all the hope in the world. At 14 years old, I remember a doctor telling my parents that I probably wouldn't be able to have kids. And I'm a 40-year-old mom to a really wild 17-month-old healthy baby boy. So there's a lot of hope. Even though I didn't have to do IVF for infertility, I had to do it to bank embryos because of my past fertility issues in my 20s and teens. Science is super cool. So between lifestyle and science, I wish you the best of luck. I think there's a lot to be positive about. All right, the next question is from Miggy from the Netherlands. Miggy is asking, can you wreck your thyroid by fasting too much? Or is this not true and can you heal it with fasting? Mine was subclinical hypothyroidism but returned to normal when I stopped fasting without meds. I am back to alternate day fasting now because I love fasting so much. This is a big thing to unpack, Miggy, but in general, fasting is perfectly fine. You just have to do what you can tolerate. So we would want to look into, one, why do you have subclinical hypothyroidism? Is it because you have reverse T3 hypothyroidism? If that's the case, we would begin your fast after breakfast. This actually helps prevent the conversion of free T4 into reverse T3, driving it into the form of free T3, and sort of course correcting some of that subclinical hypothyroidism just by changing the meal timing. And then we would start our fast at breakfast and we would end it at breakfast the next day, and we would just see how the body was doing. Often that helps in those cases of, say, reverse T3 hypothyroidism. When someone says that thyroid function has gotten worse while fasting, are you checking your thyroid levels while you are fasting? We never, ever want to do hormone blood work or lipid blood work while we are fasting. The numbers are all going to be temporarily thrown off. So people will be halfway through a 42-hour fast or 48-hour fast, or they'll be 3 days into a fast and they'll go get blood work done. And this blood work is not going to be representative of your hormone levels at all. The advice I give for hormones, so when anyone that I'm working with at the fasting method, is to not fast for more than 14 hours a day for 2 to 3 days before doing any hormones. Whether that's thyroid hormones, whether that's sex hormones, we want to stop fasting for at least 2 days. For lipids, at least 3 days. And most people are doing all these at the same time, so it's 3 days. I always tell people, book your labs on Monday, eat Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Then Sunday evening, you can begin your fast and you can launch into a 24, 42, 48, 3-day fast, whatever at that point, because you're going to do your labs the following morning at 12 to 14 hours fasted. And that is the best time. So sometimes people look at their labs and deeper into these therapeutic fasts, and that they think that the numbers are not ideal. They're not going to be ideal. Lots going on in the body when you're fasting. So you do want to sort of stabilize a norm here and then having your levels checked. So if you came into a consultation or in one of our community groups, that would be the very first thing that I ask, since you are checking your labs in the morning without medications. Were you fasting, and how fasted were you? How long had you stopped fasting before doing these particular labs? There are instances, a lot of my colleagues in the low carb space do believe that fasting helps lower inflammation in the body, and it's cellular inflammation that causes subclinical hypothyroidism. And that when that cellular inflammation is reduced, then the subclinical hypothyroidism goes away. So I actually have a lot of colleagues in the low carb space that won't even bother trying to treat subclinical hypothyroidism with any type of medication, especially if it's not too far off, because the fasting will lower that inflammation, improving and correcting this issue. Dr. Fung and I also have a Facebook group. It's a free community. It's like the wild, wild west, to be honest. I spend a lot of time in our community forum, but every now and then I peruse the Facebook group, and I saw one woman report that it had actually reversed her hypothyroidism over time as well. We want to address any nutrient deficiencies. We want to make sure that the adrenals are in good shape. We want to make sure we know what's causing that subclinical hypothyroidism in the first place. Maybe it's iron, maybe it's selenium, maybe it's iodine, maybe it's the cortisol. So there's all these little things that we can look at and that we can easily address either through food or through some lifestyle modifications. Then we are able to help further support the thyroid and carry on with ADF. So those are things to take a look at. I would make sure you get some blood work done, know your morning cortisol. That's best to do with a saliva test or a urine test though, over a 24-hour period. But get some selenium, iodine, and iron panel checked in the morning too. Get your reverse T3 levels checked as well, so we have a better idea as to what is the cause of the subclinical hypothyroidism. And then just be mindful of when you are doing your blood work. The last question for today's Q&A is from Susie in South Carolina. Susie says, I've been on a night shift schedule at the hospital for the last 30 years, working 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. I love to know the ins and outs, stay as healthy as possible on nights, and the best way to fast with that schedule. Hospital, as someone who spent most of her life working in a hospital or just in a hospital for family reasons, they're the worst places to eat. So if you are going to eat, bringing foods that you can have. So doing meal prep, meal planning in advance. As someone who's worked in a hospital, sometimes having things on hand just in case, a dozen hard-boiled eggs, a pound of cooked chicken wings, some bacon, keeping a small bag of avocados around, a bottle of olive oil to go along with those avocados. Those are all things that I always just kept around in our staff room. So I would have something if I needed to that would help me stay away from some of the temptation that's there, especially during those really long and stressful days when the fasting is not necessarily going to happen. So having good, healthy food to revert back to more of these fat fasting style foods can be really good just to help you stay on track. And then, of course, doing as much meal prep as you can. So you're bringing any of your particular meals that you would eat during that time. Usually on an eating day, we would eat 2 meals. You'd have one at home before leaving. I imagine you would eat quote unquote dinner, which would be more like your breakfast before you leave for the 7 p.m. start of the shift, and then you would just eat once. So making sure that before you do go that you prep something, even if it's just a duplicate of what you've eaten right before you've gone to work and you've just made extra. That's what I found a lot of nurses and other healthcare practitioners do that work night shifts. They tend to have a bigger meal with their family before they leave to go to work. And what they bring for their next meal is just extra from that particular meal. And that's okay to do as long as you have enough variety in your diet throughout the week. So if you have something like steak and Brussels sprouts at home for dinner, then you can bring it for your lunchtime at work as well. You can just make an extra steak, make extra Brussels sprouts, bring whatever extra leftovers you have from that meal. And that's one of the easiest things to do. It can be a little monotonous, but you just got to make sure you're adding in enough variety throughout the week. And most people find that to be very sustainable. Now you get off work at 7 a.m. I imagine you don't go to bed right away. And if you are going to eat, if you are going to have your meal then, your second meal then, that's okay to do. You can have your second meal then. You just want to make sure that the time before your last meal and going to bed, the window is at least 3 hours. Optimal would be 4. So if you can eat before you go to work and then once you're at work, and then that way you're not eating at 7 o'clock in the morning, that would probably be the most ideal for this particular night shift schedule. All right, everyone, thank you so much for sending in such amazing questions. We'll be back next week with another episode. Bye for now and happy fasting.